Well, hey, this is Dammit, and here's my report for the phonemantic rite conducted on Saturday, July 10th, 2021.
I'm an alligator. I'm a mama, papa coming for you.
It was pretty challenging. I think on the whole, it was a success, but well, I gotta tell you, this time I worked on 6.5 grams of cubensis backed with a 3-gram water extract of Syrian rue. Over the course of the first hour and a half, I backed that up with 2 strong hits of sativa. And around, by the time I got to flower, which is by Soundgarden, which is about 90 minutes in, I basically felt stone sober. I couldn't believe it. The mushrooms just weren't opening up for me at all. And I, when that happens, the first thing you start to think is, maybe I've just burned myself out, or maybe there's something wrong with my supply, or you just don't know. And that uncertainty leads to doubt, and doubt can lead to despair. And that, of course, is where resistance comes at you. And yesterday was all about dealing with resistance. So before I go any further, I want to give a little bit of context. Right around this time last year, I had 3 ceremonies in a row over the course of about 2 months that just were disasters. I had to quit on each of them because I ran into something that really, really, really did not want me to be doing this work. And it was stronger than me. And it made my internal conditions so unpleasant that I just had to stop. One of those manifestations, one of the ways that force seemed to show up in my visionary space was this kind of African tribal idol. And that figure has shown up again and again in my visions over the course of the last year. During one of those ceremonies, I had this image of myself wrestling with an opponent in a gym. And it was sort of communicated to me that I needed to get so strong that I could hold this opponent down with one arm and conduct a symphony with the other. And at the time, that really seemed impossible. But yesterday it happened. And so, again, I want to emphasize that I really was not, I didn't have a lot to work with. The mushrooms weren't being visual. I wasn't feeling any kind of energy. I was tripping hard. I was feeling all that internal psychological stress that comes from working with a really high dose. But I wasn't getting the relief that comes from being wowed by the closed eye visuals. But I was getting through it. I felt good. Just through my own strength, my own will. And then during the Jane's Addiction song, 3 days, 2 things happened. One was during the moment when the song reaches this huge climax, it's followed by a breakdown in which the bass guitar is strumming these really gentle chords. And I've dubbed in the sound of a woman weeping. And I use the image of Mary as the mother of sorrows cradling Jesus' body after he's been taken down from the cross. And you're meant to identify with the goddess feeling the world's pain. And when it works, it's really incredible. It's both overwhelming and really beautiful, as painful as it can be. And so when I got to that point during the song last night, I felt a physical pushing against me, trying to force me to sit down, and a really, really, really nasty effort to suppress my ability to feel emotion at all, let alone something delicate like sorrow and grief. But I was able to hold an attitude against it where I held that pressure at bay, and I was able to do it so strongly that I was able to relax at the same time and actually feel, which has eluded me all this time. When resistance hits me that hard, everything that I have, it just goes to holding it at bay. And this is the first time I felt like I had mastered it. And that was tremendous. And then something really weird happened. There was this moment when I had a sense that I was attending a tribunal, and there were these God forces there, and one of them pointed out something. There was some rhythm in some way that was being interpreted phonetically, and there was an indication that rhythm was something that was familiar to him from the people that he sort of represented. And he asked me, is this what you intend to do with this? And I said, yeah. And then he said, I give my assent. And I knew in that moment who he was. He was that African tribal deity that's been so implacably opposed to me this year. There's always been this sense when he shows up that there's something, there was a racial grievance about it. It had something to do with his belief that what phonomancy was representing was a future in which white people were ascendant. That's not the case at all. In fact, in the visions that I've had, it's Africans that lead us into the future. The Africans that take us to the stars. It's basically Wakanda forever. And when he seemed to grasp that and accept it, and he was no longer going to oppose my efforts in this stuff. And when he said, I give my assent, I heard this tremendous cracking sound, like granite giving way, like tectonic plates shifting, so strong that I actually flinched and looked back over my shoulder. And then all of a sudden, I went from 0 to 100 miles an hour in less than 3 seconds. The gates opened, and all of a sudden, there was all this energy pouring through my head. It was an incredibly intense psychedelic vision of, I guess I could compare it somewhat to the vision I had of the vaulting heavens and the throne of God from last year, but it wasn't anywhere near as informationally dense. And the other thing about it too is, as powerful as it was, and I'm gonna cut in the video somewhere in here so you can see what I'm talking about.
I'll tell you about it in a minute, as much as I can remember. We were judged, and we passed. And the God of the Blacks gave us assent. We're in, and it released an unbelievable tumult of energy.
I definitely had an enthusiasm, which is that crazy kind of spiritual orgasm experience that I'm occasionally able to induce with this stuff. But but the energy was somewhat alien to me, and it did not feel joyful, and it was not particularly spiritually nourishing. It was ravishing, but I didn't come out the other side of it glowing the way I do when it's the energies of the goddess that I'm exposed to. I honestly don't know what to make of that stuff. You can call it a hallucination, and I guess it is in some way, but it's also a very, very real experience, a spontaneous experience, not anything that I have any sort of control over. It happened. It happened to me in a way that when somebody claims that they saw a UFO or something like that, that happened to them. There was these things crack your world open, and they make you realize, like, you are taking part in something real, even if you have no fucking idea what's going on, really. But of course I do. You know, it plays into this overall, this myth that I'm living out, where I am here to create a working prototype of a religion of the future. This is just the next step. Now, even with his ascent, I still felt resistance, terrible resistance for the rest of the ceremony, and I still had at intervals the visions of the vermin, the insects, sort of in my visionary space. So he, whatever he is, was not the source of that. So that's some good information. I'm not really sure what it is. I kind of got the idea at a certain point that, like, again, I feel like I'm in this training matrix, you know, and there is a transpersonal entity that's basically acting as my Morpheus, and that's unleashing these things on me to see how I'll do with them, to see how I'll handle them. And last night I got the idea it was the Archangel Michael himself that was acting in the form of resistance and putting this stuff against me. I honestly don't know, man. I don't know. It went on from there. There wasn't really anything, again, there was no new visionary material. I never managed to punch through into the spirit world. I felt incredibly powerful. I felt like I was doing magic. I felt like Conan the Barbarian, frankly, but it was all under my own strength. I was not pulling from that celestial place. And so when it was over, I was depleted rather than replenished. And of course there's all the reassurances that come. This is happening. It's on its way. Don't worry about a thing. This is the reality that's unfolding. Fair enough. Ultimately, it becomes about belief. I had this sense that the goddess was giving me 90% of what I needed, and she needs me to cross that line, to come to her in my belief. And I'm sort of obstinately insisting that she come to me and give me proof. And it's kind of this battle of wills that is, I don't know why I would want to struggle with a goddess like that. Just give her what she wants. You know, it's ultimately, I can't possibly win against it, but I'm also not quite sure how to give her what she wants, except that I have to practice believing every day that this is all for real and this is really going somewhere and something great and amazing is going to come out of all this stuff. There was one spectacular idea, though, that did come out. But it actually happened after ceremony when I was out walking my dog. I'm getting really good at, like, grounding back within, you know, I could do this huge work, and then within an hour or two afterwards, I'm normal. I feel there's no sense of, you know, that kind of vertigo that can come sometimes. In the context of the ceremony, I was attempting to do Tonglen, which is a Tibetan practice where you imagine that you are breathing in and absorbing the pain of the world and then transmuting it and then sending out light, you know, and positive emotions instead. And I kind of had been doing that spontaneously without really realizing that I was doing that all through. I've always called it burning shadow to make light, but it's the same kind of thing. Now I just do it consciously. And when I was out in the park, I saw somebody by themselves and they looked lonely. And I thought, let me take some of that from them, put that on me. And then I saw other people who looked like they were in pain, and I thought, put that on me. I'll take it. I'll carry that for them. And this morning, when I was out getting some coffee and a bagel, I saw a woman who was having a full-on schizophrenic meltdown. And I told the goddess, put some of that crazy on me, lighten her load. Let me carry it for her. And it brought to mind that quote from Camus, from the myth of Sisyphus, where he says, one must imagine Sisyphus happy, which is to say, life is meaningless, and yet you have to find meaning in the struggle and in the momentary satisfactions. You know, he imagines that Sisyphus labors to push that boulder up the hill, and then he has that moment where he gets there and he feels complete joy and satisfaction at his accomplishment. And then when it rolls back down the hill, he just laughs and goes back and gets to it again, you know? And so I found myself thinking, one must imagine Atlas dancing, which is kind of I think that's going to be my credo to live by from now on, because that is the very goal of this training, to get so strong, that idea that you can get so strong holding off resistance that you can conduct a symphony or sing and actually feel things. That's where I want to be. And in my daily life too, you know, you feel there's a direct carryover. I've got I'm holding a fair amount of anxiety and despair at bay every single day for hours at a time. And I want to get so strong that I can feel it, know I feel it, admit I feel it, and yet be in a perfectly good mood anyway. I'm just about there. I'm getting pretty good at it. Oh, the one thing that I wanted to mention is I did the ceremony out in my garage, which meant that I got to sing at full volume. And it felt great. And I sang for like 4 hours straight without losing my voice, which was fantastic. But I was wearing full headphones with no, I wasn't using a mic or getting any kind of monitor or anything in my headphones. So when I went back and listened to the recordings later, I sound like, you know, somebody who's deaf when they speak aloud. It did not come out well. And that's, you know, that's kind of a drag. I am really making some pretty good progress, and I know that when I can finally work in an environment where I have my PA and I've got a a microphone and a monitor and stuff like that, it's all going to work out great. But I think that part of the reason why I wasn't able to get anything going in terms of my closed eye visions was I was spending so much attention concentrating on singing and trying to sing correctly, and so it just didn't leave me any attention left over for it. And I just have to get things to the point where I have achieved unconscious competence and I don't have to think about it anymore. May that day arrive sooner rather than later. I love singing so much, and it kills me to be just so without any natural talent. And I keep waiting for that day to arrive where I just know that it's good and I won't have to worry about it ever again. God is willing. It'll be here soon. Anyway, that's my story. As ever, I remain Dammit, reminding you, if you ever say yes to any pleasure in life, you have to say fuck yeah to every pain as well. So do it for your ma.
I'm an alligator. I'm a mama, papa coming for you.